Oh, no, I bet you're dizzy.
At least it's math, though.
Uh-huh.
At least it's math. I'm so done with reading right now.
I'm not a reader.
It was hard for me to take my science test, social studies, and my English because there's so much to read.
I would have gone to sleep. I'm not very good at.
I almost went to sleep.
Okay, today we're going to factor trinomials. Now, yesterday we found greatest common factors, and greatest common factor is your very first step always. In fact, you should have this in your email. This is a step-by-step about factoring quadrilaterals, factoring polynomials as it is. And notice that step number 1, I put an asterisk on and underlined the GCF, because as you learn to factor your trinomials or your polynomials, you practice so much on trinomials that don't have a greatest common factor that when they start to put a greatest common factor in your problems, then you forget to look at that. Okay, so the very first step in factoring is always, always, always look for the greatest common factor, always. Now, most of the stuff you do today won't have them, but we will do some. So, and those of you remotely, I sent a packet that has 6 pages in it that I want you to practice before we continue with packet 3 after spring break. So I'm just going to jump right in here and teach you how to factor trinomials. We're going to do this again after spring break, but I want to give everybody a heads up in case they want to work these problems during the holidays. So here's a trinomial. Now we need to factor this. That means to break it down into items that could be multiplied together to come back to the answer. Factoring means to break this up, divide it. Like if you wanted factors of 6, you would divide this up into either 1 and 6 or 2 and 3, right? These are factors that would multiply back to the original. These are factors that would multiply back to the original, but we divided to get them. Factoring is taking this and dividing it into pieces that we could multiply together that would take us back to the original. Now that's just an overview of what we're going to do. I will definitely explain every step, but this is what we're doing. Okay, keep that instruction sheet close by, and you're definitely going to want that when we come back to spring break. All right. When we factor this, if you'll look at step number 1 with the asterisk, it says look for greatest common factor. That means either a number or a variable that you can divide out of each piece. Now you notice that this is 1, this is 8 and 15. 8 won't divide into 1. 15 won't divide into 1. The shortcut here, guys, this is a shortcut. If there is not a coefficient here except our invisible 1, and if there is not a variable at the end, there probably is not a greatest common factor. Okay? So when we look at this, we say, no, there's not a greatest common factor. Okay, and so we go to step number 2. Now, step number 2 says look for some specials. We will not talk about specials at all until after the break. Specials are listed down below, but I'll explain all of that when we get there. The next step says to look for grouping. And grouping, the Q to find specials is, it only has 2 terms. Well, this has 3 terms, so there's definitely not a special here. And then step number 3 says look for a grouping.
That's 4 terms.
And it has 4 terms or more, I found out.
Okay.
We'll be doing 4 or 6 terms, but this only has 3, so it's definitely not a grouping. So step number 4 is where we're going to be working today. It says if you don't have a special and you don't have a grouping, then we're going to go straight to factoring into 2 parentheses. Okay? These are the steps that you do for this. Okay. You're going to have numbers and variables here, numbers and variables here. Now, when I talk about these, this is the front and this is the back. When I talk about the front and the back, front and back, this is the front and the back. Are you guys okay with that? So the value that goes here and here, the front times the front will give me the front. Okay? So if I take x times x, that will give me x squared, right? Okay, so I'm done with that for now. Then I always suggest to my students that they box the middle term in, including the sign, and we're going to ignore that for a minute because we want a back value times the back value to give us the back value. Now here's how this part works. I need to list all the factors of 15. So I've got 1 times 15. And remember, we did this yesterday when we were listing everything. So I suggest you go in order. Will 2 go into 15? Will 3 go into 15? Go in order of your numbers and you will be able to get all of the values. So 3 times 5. What about 4? Will 4 divide into 15? And 5 will, but we have already used 5. So this is all. That's all. Okay, now here is the key to this whole puzzle. You look at a pair of these and decide which pair will add or subtract to give you the middle value. So 3 and 5, it won't be 1 and 15, that's 16 or 14, but 3 and 5 will add together, right? It'll add together to give us 8. And so we know that 3 and 5 will go in the back because 3 times 5, the back times the back gives you back. Are we good? Now there are 2 ways to find out the sign. I'm going to show you the first way. Didn't I show you yesterday, Wyatt, the code way? Mm-hmm. I'll show you guys after the break, the code part. But here's what you do now. Now you need to know what sign goes in here and here. And on these first ones, you can kind of tell. But here's the process. You multiply the insides together and you've got a 3x, right? Mm-hmm. Multiply the outsides together and you have 5x. And then this is all just work. You have to get a positive 8x. So you have to decide what are the signs going to be here that will give you a positive 8x. They're going to have to be a positive and a positive, right? Positive 3 plus positive 5 gives you a positive 8. I'm watching your eyes, Brandy.
Oh, I'm just watching.
You're okay?
Yeah.
Okay. So I know that the 3 has to be a positive and the 5 has to be a positive if I'm going to add those together and get a positive 8. Okay? So I just follow my lines back up and I say the 3 has to be a positive and the 5 has to be a positive. Okay? Now, it's kind of hard the first time to know what your answer is. But if it says to factor this, that means find the 2 things that we're going to multiply together that would give me the original. So this is your answer. This set of parentheses right here is one of the factors. This is the other factor. So this binomial times this binomial, if we use the FOIL, like we did earlier, would come out to this original. That would be how we would check our answer. Do you want to see that?
So I have a question.
Yes.
So it's x squared, like in the original before we solve it, it says x squared plus 8x. So isn't there 3 x's? Because it's x squared plus the other x.
Would there be 3 x's?
Yeah, because it's the x squared plus the other x's in there.
I'm going to show you, and then maybe that will answer your question. I'm going to take our answer and check it by multiplying it back and see if I get this. Okay? And I think that might help you. So my answer was x plus 3.
This is what I was doing.
Yeah, times x plus 5. Yeah, this was another thing that you were asking about.
Yeah, because what I was doing is if it was like positive, since it's positive 3, I would add the 5, get 8, and then that would be my first one, and then I would multiply it to like 3 times 5, which would give me my other number, and I was getting it right for the most part.
Okay. Yes, as long as you understand what you're doing.
Mhm.
I'm going to break it down further.
Yeah, because like if you have 3 plus 5, if it was a negative, you just do
Subtract.
negative, yeah, and then you do like negative 3 times 5.
I understand what you're saying, and at the point of progress that you are, I'll let you do that. Okay. All right. And remember that to multiply 2 binomials together, we either use the FOIL method or the box method. And then I showed you how I don't use the letters, but it actually is the FOIL method. I look at these and I say, if this is times this, then that means I have to take the first one times each piece, and then the second item times each piece. So here's what I do. I'm going to start with this first, and I'm going to say, okay, I'm going to multiply it times the x. So x times x is x squared. Yes? Mm-hmm. Then I need to take this first term and take it times everything in that parentheses. So now I'm going to take x times 5. Now remember, this is an invisible one. So 1 times 5 is a positive 5x. Do you see? X times a positive 5 is 5x. We okay? Now I've taken this first term times everything in the second parentheses. Now it's time to take the second term times everything. Remember, we're going to use the plus on here, a positive. So I'm going to take a positive 3 times the first term. And this is an invisible one. So 3 times 1 is 3, and it has an x. So it's a positive 3x. And we've got one more. I still have to take this term times the last piece here. I have a positive times a positive, which gives me a positive 15. Now, before I'm finished, I always look for common terms. And in this case, I have a positive 5 x's, and I'm going to add 3 more x's. And so for these common terms, I can just put this together, get 8x, and then I don't have any more x squareds. I said this is a positive 8x, and I don't have any more constants.
So, okay, so like right there though, when you're working it back, this is something. So you get 5 or plus 5x plus 7.
It looks like that. The only time you get a squared out of x is if you're multiplying. Here, we're adding, so you leave the common term the way it is.
Okay, so like anytime there's like let's say there's 5x times 3x, could I get the number like 15x squared?
Yes.
Okay.
Yes, when you're multiplying, you change those exponents. When you're adding, you keep your common
What
term.
about dividing?
You subtract the exponents. Okay? All right. And so after we multiplied our answer that we got here, this was just a check to make sure indeed I have the right answer. So I multiplied them back together, and this should match my original. X squared plus 8x plus 15. So this is your answer. This is 2 factors. This isn't 4 factors. 1 parentheses is a factor. 1 parentheses is a factor. There are 2 factors here. Everybody okay with the very first one that we did? Okay,
Yes.
and one thing I noticed that I forgot to tell you, whenever we chose 3 and 5, it did not matter where we could have put the 3 here and the 5 here and it still would have worked. It only works like that if the front term is exactly the same. We're going to have some front terms later after the break that might be 2x and 1x. Then it does matter where these numbers go. And you'll see why when we get there. I'm not going to put too much on you. So are we okay with the first time around? Sandra?
Yes.
Okay. All right. Let me,
So it's like, cause like on here it says p squared plus 14b. The way I would start right now is like in parentheses.
What's the end? You didn't tell me the end one.
P squared plus 14p plus 48.
Okay.
So I would do like where the x is, I would put p, and then where the other x, I would put p, and then I would leave the 14p alone.
Yes. Yes. In fact, let's do it. Let's do that one. Is that number 1 on your packet?
Yes, ma'am.
Okay. So if you have the packet printed out, this is number 1 off of page 1. Okay, you said p squared plus 14p
Plus 48.
plus 48. Now, it's very important to me, and it's going to be important that we go through the steps. Did you say something, Sandra?
No, I was talking to my daughters over here. Sorry.
Okay, no problem. It's not a problem. Okay. So I want to go through the steps so that that starts to just burn in your brain. So very first step is to look through here and see if we can find a greatest common factor. And we found out that the shortcut is if the front coefficient is an invisible 1 and there's no variable back here, there's a pretty good chance there's not a greatest common factor, except 1, and we don't deal with that.
So what about 2?
So we go to the second step. And the second step says look for any specials. Now specials only have 2 terms. This has 3 terms. So there's no specials. And then the next step says look for grouping. Well, grouping has 4 or more terms, and this has 3. So I know it's not anywhere close to a grouping, and we'll worry about those later. So step number 4 says, okay, if none of that works, then we're going to we're going to factor into 2 parentheses. That's what step 4 says. So go ahead and write your 2 parentheses because that gets you started in this process. Now the front times the front gives you the front. I want to make sure Brandy's with us too. The front times the front will give you the front. So I have P times P. And those of you that need this, this is an invisible 1. So 1 times 1 gives me the 1, and the P times P gives me the P squared. Okay, we're going to ignore this for a minute. This comes in our last step. Remember to include the sign because sometimes this is going to be a minus sign. All right, and then we look at the back and we say we need to know all the factors of this. Now, some people can do this quickly, but we're going to do 1 times 14, 2 times 24, 3 times 16, 4 times 12, 5 won't go in it, 6 times 8, 7, and then 8 is our next one, and we're through because we've already used our 8. See how I go in order? That's how I know when to stop.
Where we're going in 48?
Yes, we're finding out all the factors of 48.
Then why is it 114?
Is that what you were thinking too, Brandy?
No, I was actually going out of the 14.
Well, what we do is have to find the factors and then we'll look at those to see what we'll add or subtract
That's right, I'm doing it backwards.
to give us the 14. And so we can see that it's the 6 times the 8, okay? So it doesn't matter which one it goes in because the p's are the same. And I want you to test it even though it may be clear to you what it is, these are going to get bigger. So you need the process while it's easy, okay? And I need to come up with a positive 14p. So what do the signs here have to be to get a positive 14? They both have to be plus. Are you using the shortcut code, Wyatt? Or are you just doing it?
No, well, kind of.
Okay. For the shortcut code, what does this tell us? The back one.
Plus.
The code to tell you what the signs are. Remember?
Oh, yeah, no, I don't remember the code.
This one says the signs are going to be the same. That says what they are.
Okay, so like if it's negative, then it's gonna be different, right? Or
If it's negative, it's going to be opposite signs. And then it'll tell you which one's the biggest.
okay.
Okay? Which sign goes on the biggest number. In this case, we need a positive 6 plus a positive 8 to get us a positive 14. And so I know that in my answer, this is my answer right here. This is one factor, this is the other factor. If I stop and multiply those, I will come back to the original trinomial. Let's find a minus.
Number 5 or 6.
We'll do 5 because I don't want to do the ones with the leading coefficient different than 1. I'm not going to do that.
Or we could do 9.
Let's do both of them. No, 9 has that leading coefficient is 3. I just want the leading coefficient to be 1 on these today. I'm not even going to do the others. Do you see what I'm saying, Wyatt? I'll do them for you if you want to after we're through.
I think
Okay, so let's do number 5. Oh, I see what you're saying. I'm looking at my teacher examples.
Oh.
I'm not looking at the worksheet. Let me find the worksheet so I can do the ones you want. That's why I keep saying, no, I'm not going to do that. Okay, tell me again.
It was number 5, 6, and 9.
Okay, let's do 6.
6.
Brandy, we're going to do number 6. And I'm on this, number 6 right here. Okay, Sandra. B squared minus 9b plus 14. Some of you are faster at this than the others, but we need to go through all of the steps. So I need number 1, look for greatest common factor. If there is a 1 here and no variable, probably no greatest common factor. Step number 2, look for specials. Specials have 2 terms. This can't be a special. Number 3, step number 3 says look for a grouping, but grouping has to have 4 terms or more. This has 3 terms, so there's no grouping in this. We'll do those after the holiday. So our step number 4 says to factor into 2 parentheses. Okay? The front times the front will give me the front term. So I have B times B. And for those of you that need this also, it's an invisible 1 times 1 gives me the 1 part, and the B times B gives me the B squared. Then I box in the middle term. Notice you need to include the minus, which makes it a negative or minus, either one. And then before we can decide what goes in here, we have to find all the factors of 14. So I have 1 times 14 2 times 7, 3, 4, 5, 6 doesn't go in here, but 7 does, and we've already got 7, so that's all of them. Are we good? So now I need to look at this set or this set that will add or subtract to give me 9.
2, 7, 5.
And the 2 and 7, you can see when you add them, it will make 9, but we need to be careful here. So now we're going to check and see what sign we want. We've got 7b here, 2b here, and I need to get a negative 9b. How will I add these together to get a negative 9b? What do the signs need to be? They need to
-2.
both be negatives. Because remember, if I have all negatives, I just stack them up in one hand. And so I've got 7 negatives, and I found 2 more, put them in there. That makes a handful of 9 negatives.
So is it negative for both?
Negative for both of them.
So that means we're adding 2 negative. means
Here.
we're gonna add.
Here we have
get
to
that
add
9.
to get this, yes.
Yeah.
Always think I'm adding here, even though it ends up thinking subtract.
When you start getting to negative numbers and like you add more negative numbers, it's just adding.
Yes.
That's all it is. It's just-
Yes, yes,
Even though you're still subtracting, you're still adding. You're doing both at the same time.
yeah.
Same thing with division and multiplication, right?
The rules are different. Okay? Because 2 negatives when you're multiplying or dividing turns into a positive.
That's right.
Why
But
is
if we're,
that a -2?
because if you take -7 plus a -2, that's how you get a -9.
Okay.
If you made that a positive,
On the, above that, yes.
because we decided the negative goes on the 2, so the negative goes on the 2. I just brought it up into the problem. Again, there's an awful lot of work that goes into this, and so you need to know which one is your actual answer. And this is your actual answer. 2 factors, a binomial times a binomial that will give you this trinomial if you multiply it back together.
So I get that, but
Okay, I want to do, let me look at one that I want. Yes, let's look at number 12.
well,
Number 12 on the front page.
oh, this was okay. This is one of the ones I was confused about.
Okay,
I was like, I substituted the in front of the R with a 1
yes,
to see if that could have worked, but I was getting the wrong answer.
all right. We'll just look at it and go through the same rules here. Look for greatest common factor, guys. It's 1, no variable here, probably not a greatest common factor, okay? And then, is it a special?
Wait,
A special has how many terms?
2.
2. Is this a special? This is 1, 2, 3
okay,
terms.
Okay, that's what I was thinking in terms of.
Okay, so it's not a special. The next step says look for grouping. It has to have 4 or more terms. 1, 2, 3 terms. So it's not a grouping. So we're going to go to 2 parentheses. And I'll tell you a secret. The ones that I want you to do, if you're going to work anything over the break, are all going to be the 2 parenthesis things. Okay, but go through those steps so you're used to them. Okay, so the front times the front gives me the front. So I've got 1 R here. You don't have to write the 1, but it helps. R times R gives you R squared. Lock this in and we know that's an invisible 1. Now we have to find the factors of 20. 1 times 20, 2 times 10, 3 does not go in, but 4 times 5. Now you're going to look at each set and see what will add or subtract to give you 1. We don't need to worry about the positive right now,
Like to get 1,
just to get 1.
4 minus 5.
So there's a difference of 1 here, right? So if I subtracted this, it'd give me 1. This will give you either 12 or 8, 19 or 21. Not going to work. 4 and 5. Since the fronts are the same, it doesn't matter where I put these numbers. Check it, and we have 4 R's and 5 R's. I need a positive 1 R.
No, you just minus.
But which one? Yes, I'm going to minus it, but which one? I need a positive 1.
4.
5.
5 what? What about 5?
It's a negative. A positive.
It's a positive.
And the 4.
And then minus, and it's a negative 4.
Yes. The
Because
bigger.
we're taking 1 from the 5. No, yes.
Yes.
Okay.
Okay.
So it'd be R.
5 minus 4 will give you 1.
So then-
Okay. So the 4 has to be the minus, and the 5 has to be the plus. Y'all see?
Mhm.
And when you see the answer, it won't have this 1 in it.
Yeah.
But if you need the 1, it's not wrong. You just
I'm
want
getting it. I'm understanding it, but I'm still.
your positives
tripping
and
on those.
negatives.
I'm still tripping on those.
The part that I have a hard time remembering to do is the.
Miss Deborah,
Yes, ma'am, Sandra.
that's what I was gonna ask you too. I'm not understanding how you decide if it's gonna be a negative or a positive.
That's where Brandy's having a problem here too. Okay. And what I suggest for a while, if you're having trouble with this, what I would do is get your calculator and say, okay, if I put a positive and a positive here, would it come out a positive 1? And try it in your calculator. And then say, well, that won't work. It'll give me 9. So you go here and then try this in your calculator. And that won't work. It'll give you a negative 9. So change one of them. And you say a negative 5 plus 4 is going to give me a negative 1. That still won't work, but I'm getting closer. So then just switch these. You only have to try 4 times. So if you put a 5 in your calculator and minus 4, that's where you get the positive 1. So for a while, if it's giving you trouble, use your calculator and see what the signs need to be. Sound good for
Okay.
now?
Yeah.
It will get better, but yes, negatives and positives might throw you here. Now, I wasn't going to show you this code, but I've already shown Wyatt. I think Brandy can get it, and Sandra, I think it might be helpful for you too. This will help people that are having trouble with their negatives and positives. Okay?
Okay.
There's a code that is hiding in your trinomial. Now, the first time you hear this, you're going to go, I'll never remember that. So write it down, okay? The back sign, that's a code that will tell you whether the signs are going to be the same, like 2 positives or 2 negatives, or opposite. All that does is say, are the signs here and here going to be both the same, or are they going to be opposite like here? Okay? If this sign is a plus, then the signs are going to be the same signs. If it's a minus, the signs here will be opposite. Okay?
So anytime it's going to be like a negative number times a positive number, is it always going to be a negative number, the answer?
Negative times positive. Yeah, then it will be a minus back here.
Okay, so anytime I multiply positive by negative, it's always
But then you've got to decide which one is negative and which one's positive. So that takes me to the other sign. The other sign, this one, that tells you that if the signs are the same, this tells you what the signs are going to be. If the signs are opposite, this sign tells you what the biggest number is going to be. Okay, that's the first time through. I know you need to see it some more. But in this particular problem, if we didn't do this bottom stuff, if we didn't do this, then here's how this would work. I would do all of this the same, okay? I would find the 4 and 5. I'd do everything exactly the same. But if I'm having trouble getting these signs right, then I would look here at the back first. The back is just a code that says you're going to have opposite signs. Now I have to decide, okay, I have a plus and a minus, but where do they go? This sign says you're going to put a plus on the biggest one. So I'm going to put a plus here. I know they have to be opposite. And so there's the other one. Okay. Sandra, do you kind of see it, or you need to see another one for sure?
No, I kind of see it.
Okay. That could help you with those negatives and positives very
Okay.
quickly. Okay. Let's do another.
Is it cool if I go get a voucher code?
Take another practice test.
Yes.
Yes, sir. And tell them when I get through with my lesson, I'm going to, I'll send them an email because they need something in writing. Okay. All right, let's go to the second page. You have lots and lots and lots of practice. And again, none of it is assigned. I think spring break, emphasis on the break. We don't do school when it's a break.
Miss Deborah, on number 2 on page 1,
Yes?
because those are 2 positives, so my answer is going to be a positive, right?
Positive and positive. Yes. Okay, I'm going to go to page 2 and just pick out another one. Let's do, I'm trying to find one. There's not one that I like. Okay, I'm going to go x squared, number 7 on page 2, okay? Page 7 on page 2. So I've got x squared plus 4x minus 32. Okay, the first step, look for a GCF. But our test is, if the front is just a 1 and there's no variable here, probably not a greatest common factor except for 1 and an invisible 1. Step number 2, look for specials. Specials have 2 terms. This has 3, so there's no special. Step number 3 says look for grouping. Grouping has 4 or more terms. This has 3, so it's not a grouping. So our next step is to go to 2 parentheses, okay? So the front times the front gives me the front. So I've got 1x and 1x. And then I box in the middle to weight. 32 is 1 times 32, 2 times 16, 3 doesn't go, 4 times 8, 5 won't go, 6 no, 7 no, and the next one is 8, and we already have used the 8. And so now from this set of factors, I need to decide which set will add or subtract to give me 4.
4 times 8.
Good. So we're going to have 4 and 8. Again, it doesn't matter which one right now. Okay, we're going to go at this 2 ways. we're gonna say 4x and 8x has to give me a positive 4x. There's just two of them. Okay. Give me a positive 4x. And so I know that I have to subtract them. That's the only way I'm going to get 4.
It's -4 and +8.
There you go, the bigger one. There we are. So I have a minus and a plus here, and this is the answer. Now let's look at the code since I went ahead and told you guys what it is. Look at the back sign. All this says is that the signs are going to be opposite. One's going to be positive and negative. That's all this says. This says if they're going to be opposite, then the biggest one has to have this sign. The biggest one has to have the positive. 8 has the positive, 4 has the negative. Because they're opposite signs. Yeah?
She said that you had to send an email before I could get one.
Not a problem. We'll do that as soon as I'm finished here. Okay, any questions? If, again, I am going to specify that you do not have to do anything. You don't have to do anything over the holidays. But if you do, and these will be in your email, Sandra, I'll check and make sure you get one. If you don't, text me, okay?
Okay.
It was yesterday. And then I don't want you to do any of these down here because we haven't done these yet. The ones that have something other than a 1 in front of the leading. The leading coefficient is something other than 1. See, it has
Okay.
numbers in front. Don't do those until we talk about them when we come back. So
Okay.
each one of the pages has plenty of practice where the leading coefficient is 1. Just do those if you're going to practice. That's all I want you to do.
Okay.
Down here, see, here's one that has 2 as a leading coefficient. Wait for those. And this one, wait. If there is a number besides 1 as a leading coefficient. Okay? Now, the last 2 pages in this packet are grouping. And it will say, no, it does. Yeah, it does. Here's one of the pages, and it says factor by grouping. Don't do those.
Okay.
Don't do those at all. And that's the last 2. Both of them say this. Factor by grouping. We didn't even touch this today. We will do both
Okay.
of those when we come back. So if you want to practice anything, just practice the ones that have 1 as the leading coefficient. Any questions? Yes,
No,
sir.
ma'am.
I will, but I'm not going to do that on the recording right now, okay? And Brandy, any questions on what we're doing today? Sandra, are you okay with what we're doing today?
Yes, I think I'm okay.
You promise to have a good spring break?
I promise.
Okay. If you need anything, it's not a problem if you text me during spring break.
Okay.
It's not a problem at all, or call, okay?
Okay, thank you.
Okay, well, I'm finished for today.
Okay.